Welcome back to the second tier of, I held up 3 fingers, but I meant to only hold up 2. The thumb just came out to the side naturally. But second tier of the roguelike tier list. If you haven't seen the explanation of tier 1 yet, somewhere around here, however I want to do that, there'll be some kind of link thing that you can click on or in the description or something like that. This video took a lot longer than I expected to get out. I was planning on almost immediately turning around and recording it, but then Christmas happened, New Year's, a couple of commissions. I'm a teacher, so our new school year started up again, so just been busy. Also, hopefully this looks a lot nicer. Ignore the missing foam panels that are over yonder there. Yeah. I'm working on filling those in, but got some foam panels up, got some more lights in, and some other stuff to help with the sound in here. But enough of that. Without further ado, let's talk about the second tier of this iceberg. First, we're going to be talking about Moonlighter. It is the first original game that it was developed by a Spanish indie company called Digital Sun. This was only a team of 6 that was dedicated originally to the game's creation, and this was a side project for Digital Sun, and they started to put a lot more effort into it once they had a very successful Kickstarter, raising $134,000 for it. 11-Bit Studios then was reached out by Digital Sun in order to make this published. Digital Sun knew that for this being, the title that it was, they needed a well-known publisher that would really help them with their marketing and sell it and blow this game up. And luckily enough for them, it did, especially for it to be here in tier 2 of the iceberg. So this was nominated as a fan favorite indie game and fan favorite RPG at the Gamers' Choice Awards in the year 2018 when it came out. This game is extremely impressive, considering that it's their first original game, and they only had some experience before this with just like some mobile games, adverts, and some sample PC games. Their CEO, Javier Gimenez, he mentions Rogue Legacy, Binding of Isaac, Harvest Moon as key inspirations for Moonlighter's gameplay, which we'll be getting into just here in a second. You'll see how much Harvest Moon really has influenced this game. Moonlighter is following the story of Will. He's an ordinary shopkeeper, but he has the dream of becoming a hero one day. In order for Will to make a living, he has to venture into nearby dungeons in his town, and whatever loot he's able to take off of monsters he has slain, he then takes back to his shop, and then he sells it there. It's a really interesting take on a roguelike, since usually you're the hero and you're having to venture and find like a shopkeeper in order to help you out, but instead you're the shopkeeper that's helping supply to the town. But you're also ironically the hero as well, which is a really interesting thing. I've played a bit of this game, not a ton, so I'd be really interested to see where Will's character goes throughout the story. So in the shop itself, you are in charge of actually setting the prices, so it's not like you just get like this really good item, you put it up and it automatically gets charged. You have to, based off of what other supply and demand is, you have to set a price for it, gauge based off of your customers' reactions as to if it is a good price, a bad price, or however that may be, and try to find the price that is the most satisfactory for your customers while also being the most profitable for you. Not only is the system of being a shopkeeper really smart, the combat is actually really smart too, and it's a little bit more than a brain dead hack and slash. There is a lot of that, but at least for this, depending on whatever monster you're fighting, you actually have to have some kind of strategy, and your strategy for that given monster is going to change depending on what weapons you pick up, since there are several different weapon classes that you can play as, such as big swords, there's shields, swords and shields. So for instance, with the swords and shields, this is going to be like the most well-rounded playstyle that you can have. Whereas if you're playing with like a big sword, this is going to severely limit your movement, but obviously you're going to do tons of damage when you slay a demon or whatever else that you're fighting. I don't think there's actually demons in this. I was just thinking of the first monster word that came to mind, and I've been watching Demon Slayer lately, so So Will is also in charge of whatever gear he gets. And again, because there's not a shopkeeper, you are the shopkeeper. He is the one that is responsible for procuring whatever equipment that he is using. Even with that being the case, there are a lot of vendors in town that you can interact with that will help with crafting new weapons for you and will also be able to enhance existing weapons as well. So this makes the player slow down a lot and think about what's actually good to keep to sell, what's actually good to keep to upgrade my stuff, and hopefully maximize my profits next time that I go into this dungeon. So next in tier 2, we have the very beloved Spelunky. I'm clumping 1 and 2 in here, 1 coming out in 2008, an HD version of it coming out a few years after that, and the Spelunky 2 coming out in 2020. So this was developed by a one-man team. Originally for the Spelunky 1, this was Derek Yu. It was originally released as freeware software for Windows, and then the HD version came out later on in 2013. And then 2 was, of course, still designed by Derek, but had a much larger team going behind it, helping it run a lot smoother. The team that he was working with was at Mossmouth and Blitwork Studios. So this is like, if you, we'll at least talk about one of these games in a later video, but it's a cross between NetHack, an older roguelike, and La Mulana, I hope I'm saying that right, which is like, imagine Japanese Indiana Jones. So mesh those two together, and that's kind of not even exactly the vibe of Spelunky, but that's some inspiration that Derek used for Spelunky. So the story, or at least the center point of the story for Spelunky, doesn't really start to shine until Spelunky 2 hits. Anna Spelunky is your main character, and she is revealed to be the daughter of the original explorer that you play as in the first game. And in Spelunky 2, she is having to go to the moon in order to find her missing parents. So the original Spelunky takes place in more of a temple-like setting, think Indiana Jones. Back here on Earth, it's all about gathering as much gold and gems as you possibly can and just racking up like a high score. There's some more nice like adventure aspects to it that you can do as well, but you're doing this while dodging traps. You're defeating bats, snakes, other miscellaneous creatures that you're going to come across, and then upon death, you simply restart to the beginning, and you don't really you don't retain anything at all from your previous run that you just completed or failed to complete. And then the second game stays very true to the platforming nature of the first game. A lot of the same key gameplay components and everything going on to it, but has a little bit more of a system of progression as you play throughout the game that allows the adventure to go deeper and deeper and kind of set checkpoints for yourself in order to reach deeper into the moon. And both of these games are going to host a ton of items that the player can use in order to progress through the dungeons. So such as just simply rope, which is used to just climb up things like a ladder. Or on the other hand, you have some weirder items such as like a web gun, which is going to fire webs, which does slow you down, but it can also slow down the creatures of things that are trying to come after you. So then the next game on tier 2 is going to be Children of Morta. This was developed by Dead Mage and another game that's published by 11-Bit Studios. So this originally started off as a project between just a small group of friends who had recently been hired onto the Dead Mage team. So this game is completely different in gameplay style and art style than any of the games that Dead Mage had made up to this point. They had 3 titles before this, none of which were really all that successful, but at least successful enough that they were, still afloat, still trying to make a breakthrough. The rest of the team after Children of Morta had some thought put it into it. They saw the potential for what this game could potentially be, and then the whole team started putting a lot more of their efforts into this shortly after finishing up Shadowblade, which was the game that they released before this. And like the popularity between Children of Morta and their previous stuff is like marginally different. Like there's so many more downloads and reviews and everything for Children of Morta than there ever were, say, Shadowblade. One of the biggest jumps is between the styles of what Dead Mage was making before and what they're making now is the art style. They were heavily looking into, surprisingly, art, or like as far as their inspiration was concerned, they're looking into Studio Ghibli's art, which if you've seen Children of Morta, I'm sure I'm going to have some images and stuff, but if you've seen Children of Morta, the first thing that comes to mind is not Studio Ghibli, so it was really interesting to find that out. So these Studio Ghibli, if you don't know, they make like Japanese animation movies, and it's like stuff like Howl's Moving Castle and My Neighbor Totoro, stuff like that. And then they were also inspired by games such as Crawl and Super Time Force. Crawl is one of the roguelikes we're going to go over. I just remember that. Super Time Force, never heard of it before. So they're working with some obscure stuff on top of the Studio Ghibli stuff as well for their art. All right, so finally into the story and gameplay of this. So this is following along the family, or a family, the Bergson family specifically, that has been watching over Mount Morta, where Children of Morta, where the title comes from, for generations, and they're like these guardians of this mountain, trying to protect it. So corruption has taken a hold of the mountain. Corruption isn't just like a metaphorical thing, it's a literal thing that has started turning animals into demonic creatures. This is making Morta just a monster-infested, abysmal place to be. So the whole story of Children of Morta is following the Bergson family as their relationships grow deeper with each other, and there's some different side things that go on, and depending on which character from the family you're looking at, but it is mainly focusing on them fighting off the corruption from Mount Morta, and also they're trying to find the source of what is causing the plague to begin with. The gameplay, as IGN has worded it, is like a Diablo roguelike. You get a set of skills that you can level up. It's a skill progression based game with multiple classes being involved. It's top-down, isometric perspective, and you're killing tons of enemies at a single time. It makes a lot of sense. I've been playing a lot of Diablo 4 lately. They are pretty similar in gameplay. There's obviously differences, but it's a pretty good comparison to make. So at the start of each run, you're going to choose between different characters of the Bergson family to play as. And this is the nice thing about this game, is it is co-op, so you can bring in multiple family members down with you if you are playing co-op, but otherwise you just choose the one, obviously. So each of these members of the family are going to have something that they specialize in. So this is where the class component comes into play. So one of them is proficient in brawling, another in pyromancy, healing, assassination, and so on. So upon increasing rank, they're going to get new abilities, that family member, and they're going to be at their disposal when fighting off the corruption. But these benefits are also of great use for their family. So John, for instance, is the father who you will play first when you play this game, or if you decide you want to play this game. Upon John reaching rank 14, he gains father's protection, which this allows aid to a family member through blocking damage that would otherwise prove fatal while they're going throughout combat. Alongside like that very active ability, there's also his own personal gain and abilities through increasing rank. Another just overall passive gain that he makes through increasing rank is that every time that he goes up in rank, the overall HP of the entire family is also going to increase as well. All of the other families work with like a very similar skill tree that are used to their own benefit, but also can be used to be very helpful for the family as well. And then the nice thing about this is that no matter if you're run to fight off the demonic horde of corruption that is consuming the mountain, you can always success or fail, come back home, and there's always some sort of family interaction between the different characters that are progressing simultaneously the main story and also their own little side stories as well, giving each one an individual character arc, which is a really nice way of doing the whole meta progression thing. It's pretty similar to, if you remember Hades, Zagreus would use ambrosia or different currencies to increase his, or not ambrosia. Yeah, he would use nectar and ambrosia. He would use to increase his relationships with the people around him that were in the court of Hades. Very similar to this in this game. So next we have Monster Train, which came out in 2020, and this was developed by Shiny Shoe and published by Shepherd Entertainment. This is a roguelike deck builder. I love deck builders, but I've only actually ever played like a lot of 2 of them. I wanted to get more. I've played a lot of Slay the Spire, which we've talked about, and Wild Frost, which we will talk about. But this when I was reading this, I was like, I gotta play this. So with Armageddon impending, a railway was built, going all the way from the bottom of hell to the very tops of heaven. And then alongside this railway being built, there is a covenant established between Seraph, which is the ruler of heaven, Seraph being very similar to Seraphim, the angel type, and in hell was Herzl, which was surprisingly a human leader that was ruling over the clans of hell. So this covenant was made between the 2 of them. They wouldn't bother each other. Everything would be okay. So then comes a millennia later is then when our game is actually going to take place. So Seraph, for whatever reason, decided it'd be a great idea after all these years to invade hell. So this is completely breaking the former covenant that Seraph and Herzl had set up with each other. So in the process of invading hell, Seraph and the heavenly hosts or whatever is coming along to fight, ends up destroying this thing called the pyre. So as a result of this, the residents of hell are cast aside or cast out of hell, and they are then trying to fight their way to come back into their home of hell. It's really interesting, I think, to have a take, because usually you're the angel or just like the good guy fighting the demon, but instead you're on the side of like the people from hell fighting against angels and stuff, and the angels were the ones who messed up this time. So while using over 250 cards comprising of different monstrous units and spells from the 5 different clans that you get to play as, unless you have the DLC, you get a couple more clans that come along with you, but the player is set out to ward off the forces of heaven from the monster train, preventing them from reaching the top floor of the train. So there's multiple floors on this train, top floor in which is going to contain the pyre that you don't want destroyed. So upon starting a run, a player is going to choose a champion that is going to make up the primary clan that's going to make up the cards in their deck, and then they're also going to choose a secondary clan to hopefully, you know, give some oomph to the primary clan and make up for any weaknesses that that primary clan may have. And each clan has its very own like thought out play style. So think Magic the Gathering. So with like Red and Magic the Gathering, it's all about low cost things that just attack. Very similar to this, there's different clans and each specialize in their own different things. So the Hellhorned clan, they're just dealing straightforward damage through minion on minion combat. They're very simplistic. The Awoken, these are going to be your more defensive units, having lots of high HP. They're going to have the abilities to regenerate health. They're also going to have abilities that revolve around being able to heal other units as well. And then there's the Stygians, and they're kind of an oddball. They're really known for their really nice like synergistic qualities, but their synergies take place in really unique situations that you have to fulfill. Like there'll be a certain win condition that's set for you, and you have to fulfill that win condition. Instead of just like, if you're playing Hellhorned, you just be trying to take down all of the minions that are being thrown your way. If you're playing Stygian, it'll be like clear out the second floor 2 times or something like that in order to give you your win result. So there are also the Morsels and the Melting Remnant, and those are your final 2 clans that you can play with. And then if you get the DLC, The Last Divinity, there are also 2 more clans that you can play as well for a total of 7. So now we have a game that like blew up on the internet. It was a bit of a fad, but for really good reasons. Honestly, I still kind of want to get around to playing this myself, even though I know as much of the story as I do. But anyways, the game that we're going to be talking about next is, of course, going to be Inscryption. So this was developed by Daniel Mullins Games and was published by Devolver Digital. They seriously publish, like, not half of this list, that's an exaggeration, but they have published a lot of stuff that we've covered so far. So you know that they make some pretty popular stuff that actually gets seen a lot. So Inscryption blew up just because of its how it meshed different genres together, meshing things like horror, puzzle, trading card games, escape rooms, found footage, and other genres that I can't even get into because that would kind of spoil the game. This is definitely, to me, what the highlight of what roguelites, not necessarily roguelikes, but roguelites can be, especially as far as it's concerned with meta progression. The overall story is following along found footage that was created by content creator Luke Carter. He's a made-up person. His content revolved around trading card games, essentially. He finds this extremely obscure retro card game that's called Inscryption. And when he opens this pack for Inscryption, he finds a handwritten set of coordinates. So then Luke goes to this location, and there he finds a old floppy disk that is titled Inscryption. This then turns out to be the video game Inscryption that you are now playing. So once Luke boots up the game on his computer, he is only given the option to continue the game. He cannot possibly hit, like, there's not an option for him to hit new game. He can only hit continue game. So upon doing so, Luke is then shoved into the game as an unnamed character. Not Luke himself, but he's immersed in the game. This unnamed player that he is playing as then starts interacting with this shadow card dealer named Leshy. Leshy is found inside of this cabin that you are stuck in, and he is the game master for a card-based tabletop game that he's going to make you play. So at this point, you, the player, this is where you take the reins away from Luke and can actually begin to play. So the player is instructed by Leshy how to play this card game. You're using different animals and kind of supernatural takes on animals to fight against one another. So upon losing a run of this game, the character's soul, so like the unnamed character that you're playing as, is then going to get sucked in and trapped into a card, which you can then name the card. And this is done by Leshy taking a photograph of you. So the really interesting thing, and this is where you can start to play at multiple genres. So you either are playing this roguelike deck builder trading card game, or in between runs, you can get up away from the table that you were sitting at with Leshy, and you can walk around the cabin and interact with it as a big puzzle escape room. So throughout the gameplay itself of playing the card game and the escape room, you are using clues that you get from the card game in order to help you out with escaping from the actual room itself. And I really don't feel like I can talk about how the game progresses anymore, even though it's been out for a couple of years, but I still don't feel like giving spoilers or anything for it for anyone that wants to play after hearing this. But there becomes so much more that you get to do after you eventually escape this room. All right, and now we will be talking about Risk of Rain Returns, which came out literally late last year. So this is a remake of the original Risk of Rain. So I'm kind of clumping Risk of Rain 1 mixed in with this, although I think Returns did an infinitely better job. Well, not infinitely better. It's just a really good remake. It's been praised as like what a remake should be for a game. So as Risk of Rain 2 was developed by Hoopu Games, what do you know? Hoopu Games developed Risk of Rain Returns and was published by Gearbox Software. The reason for this remake was celebrating the game's 10th birthday, or 10th anniversary. I don't know why the article that I read for this said 10th birthday instead of 10th anniversary. Little odd, but I just rolled with the wording. And Returns was so successful because it was able to integrate the lessons learned from, not that Risk of Rain, the original, was a failure, but the failures within it and the successes of it mixed with the successes and failures of Risk of Rain 2, all being able to come back and be integrated into this original title. So the story that's initially presented in this series in Risk of Rain Returns is initially very simple, as just you are a survivor from Patriarch 5, and you... Wait, no, that's the name of the planet. No, that's not even the name of the planet. The name of the planet is Petrichor 5. Crash land on Petrichor 5, and you then are a survivor trying to just make your way through this alien wasteland. Very similar to the second game, at least in terms of the gameplay, where the second game you're trying to find additional survivors as well as the ones that made it through on the original Risk of Rain. This one, you are the survivors making it through initially the first time around. Even though that is the very simple surface level of it, this game actually has a really interesting lore behind it that I'm wanting to look to even more. with the story focusing around the fallout between two brothers that were born and raised on this planet. These are two Cyclopean humanoids named Mithrix and Providence. If you're interested in that larger story, should have either a link in the description for another video, not mine, someone else's video that you can go watch explaining the lore. Probably a lot better to video than what I'm probably going to make here, but you can go watch that for yourself if you're interested in it. So originally, in the original version of Risk of Rain, there's only 12 characters that you could play with. Now there's a total of 15 in return, so 3 more have been added on. And so once you pick one of those characters, which I believe you have to start out as the commando, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, you do have to start off as the commando on your first run. So again, much like the second game that we've already talked about, the objective is relatively the same. You're trying to fight your way through alien wildlife, except this time you're on a 2D platformer. Scales up, down, jump, jump, up and down, and jump, jump are the same thing. But anyways, your objective is to ultimately locate a teleporter and teleport yourself into the next area until you can hopefully get away from this planet. And then along the way, you're going to collect XP or in the form of gold, and this is going to help improve your abilities as a character. You're also going to be picking up several items that will be giving you a lot of passives as well. The gold also lets you interact with chests and stores that you find along the way, and activating attack drones, which are going to defensively help you out. And you can even use it at praying shrines, and praying shrines are going to randomly dish you out an item. So literally imagine Risk of Rain 2, and instead of 3D, make it 2D, and you have Risk of Rain Returns. The big reason for this remake, though, that improved upon, or what was improved upon from the original, was the graphics got a complete re-overhaul. You also, this is very nice, you don't have to kill every single monster before you can activate the teleporter. Much like in 2, you could just walk up to the teleporter whenever and click activate, and it'll spawn in the boss on you. Also, by the way, there is a boss that you have to fight as well upon activating the teleporter, but instead of having to fight every single last enemy that you find, as soon as you find the teleporter, you can hit the switch on it and it'll spawn in the final wave and the remaining boss fight that you have to complete before going on to the next section. So the other changes are, there's going to be some mild changes to atoms. There's going to be some atoms that have been added in. There's also alternate skills for characters, as well as, you know, the 3 new characters that have been added. And there's a complete, as well as the overhaul on the art, there's also a complete overhaul on music as well. The biggest thing probably is that there is a new game mode that is called the Providence Trials. Only 3 more to go. Next one, we got Warm Snow, which this one I was surprised to see do as well as it did. Also because it was just obscure for me, and it was my first time coming across it, doing research for this. But it's a Chinese roguelike. The Chinese studio was Bad Mud Studio, and it was published by, I like this name, Bilibili, Bilibili, and the other publisher was Microids. So the story of this is really cool and sounds like something that I would be into, but it's taking place in a dark fantasy world. You were playing as the character the warrior Be-On on a crusade against the 5 great clans, but the world is in a really bad state of disrepair. This is due to a strange warm snow, hence the game title, that has covered the whole world, and this snow absolutely refuses to melt. But not only is it just a weird snow that doesn't melt, it is also greatly affecting and corrupting people of this world. Through corrupting them, it's turning them into monsters, very similar to Children of Morta's corruption, turning animals into demonic entities as well. So the big 5 powerhouses of that were originally there were these 5 clans, and Be-On is trying to basically restore them and try to take them down in order to free them from this corruption. So this is a top-down gameplay as like a kind of hack and slash sort of deal. Visually, it really reminded me of, it's like also a really obscure game that I just so happened to play called Jotun. It has a very similar style, but instead of focusing on Norse mythology, it instead focuses on Chinese fantasy. Along swinging your sword, your diamond sword, you're going to have the ability to recall it. So you'll you get to actually chunk, you have multiple swords, so you're carrying like 8 on you, and you get to chunk them out at people and recall them, and almost like Thor's hammer boomerang it through someone coming back to you. This also reminded me a lot of Scissor 7, which if you've ever seen is also a Chinese thing. And then a big part of what's going to make this game shine, or not is going to, but does make this game shine, is their relic system. So Beyond has 4 slots, 4 relics that you can put in. In each of these 4 slots, you can put any one relic, but depending on which slot you put the same relic into, it's going to cause a different effect. So your 4 slots that you have are your core, your power, your agility, and your skill. Again, each relic that you put into that is going to have a different result depending on where you put it in. And you can only carry those 4 relics at one time. And you can always, when you come across a new relic, you have the option to switch it out or put it into a new slot. And then relics can also be upgraded throughout the game through a process called refining. Skills are the other big variable of what helped this game out, or one of the other big variables for Warm Snow. These things are basically your passives that are going to be provided to you. So this is going to do stuff just like increasing your damage, increasing your defense, giving you healing power, and so on. They get a little bit more complicated than that, but there are also really simple ones. And then your weapons are referred to as Excaliburs, which is pretty cool that they have Excalibur in a Chinese setting. Each Excalibur is going to have its own effect and its own type of damage it's going to deal, and then more attributes get added to the weapon as it gets upgraded over time. Upon getting upgraded to a mythic level, it then receives its own unique mythic effect that is unique to each and every weapon. And I really need to play this next one because it's been around for forever and I've never heard anyone say anything bad about it, and it sounds kind of like up my alley. But next we have Faster Than Light, that came, or FTL, that came out in 2012. This was developed by Subset Games, which consisted of 2 people at the time of FTL's creation. FTL is a spaceship simulation roguelike, which sounds odd but is awesome. So this allows you to take control of a ship and its crew and chart them across the galaxy. This was nominated for IGN's Game of the Year in 2012 and won PC Gamer's 2012 Best Short Game, or Best Short Form Game Award. The game admittedly takes a lot of heavy inspiration from Battlestar Galactica, the tabletop game, and it also takes a lot of inspiration from Star Wars as well. So you are tasked with handling this spacecraft that is able to go faster than light, hence the name of the game. The ship, it belongs to the Galactic Federation, which at the time is on the verge of defeat by a group called the Rebellion. Very original names, I know. So the Rebellion is a group of humans that are extremely xenophobic to all the other races and species that exist across the galaxy. So your ship's crew, they have intercepted a data packet from the Rebellion, and now your job is to take that data packet over to the Galactic Federation because it has information on it that will most likely allow the Galactic Federation to turn the tides and win this war. But unfortunately, the headquarters is several sectors away from you are, and there's a whole bunch of rebel ships along the way. So at the start of each run, you get to choose your own ship layout, each with their own benefits and cons. It's going to have different things like your weapon systems. There's other systems as well that are included, like piloting, your engines, we've already said weapons, oxygen, and some other functions that are on the ship. You also get to control and choose your crew. So as you progress through these different sectors, you're going to get what is called scrap, which you are then going to use as currency. You can also collect equipment along the way as well, and extra crew members through going to different beacons, is what they're called. Beacons are basically the individual checkpoints that you'll get to as you progress throughout it. So there's several beacons in each sector. There's actually probably about 20 per sector. But when you get to a beacon, not only is there a chance that, you get the good stuff like scrap, crew member, equipment, there's also the chance that it'll spawn a hostile ship. If you get the hostile ship, this is obviously going to potentially do damage to your ship and your crew and possibly compromise your mission. And then you can always come back to a beacon that you have been to before, but you have to manage your fuel throughout this game. if you warp back, it's going to cost extra fuel for you to do so, and the fuel to get all the way back. So you have a total of 8 different species that you get to choose from to recruit onto your team. Each of these have their own pros and cons that come along with them. And the neat thing is they try to base these weaknesses and strengths based off of the aliens or species physiology. So what they actually look like and are physically capable of. So for example of this, there's a species that's called the Rockmen. They look like giant rocks. They have really high HP. They're immune to fire, like a rock would be. They are like extremely slow. So if you get into a crisis, they are going to be very, very slow at actually being able to respond to it. So during combat, the game is then going to turn into a real-time combat simulator. The player is allowed to pause the game at any point and like reevaluate the situation and be able to give instructions to the crew members and what they need to do in order to take on this ship. Next, we have this list. I mean, I knew of like a lot of these, but this is only convincing me and just telling me just go ahead and play these games, even though I'm already in the middle of Elden Ring. The next game is Darkest Dungeon, if I could speak properly. So this is a gothic RPG roguelike that was developed and published by Red Hook Studios. What attracts me most to this game, and probably a lot of people, is the really nice, gritty, dark art style of it. There's been Darkest Dungeon 2, which we'll talk about later, but they're currently making a board game version of this game, which I'm looking forward to, even though I haven't played this game myself. I promise I will, but the board game would be really cool. So the story is going to follow you as the player. You get this gothic mansion that you inherit, and then you find out that there's a lot of dungeons that are underneath this mansion, so you decide to hire a bunch of heroes to go explore it for you. So before even actually going in and exploring the dungeon itself, the player has a whole town of resources of the nearby town hamlet that they can go to. This is where they're going to be able to actually recruit their heroes, gather things like food sources, light sources, very essential things that are needed for these quests. So each hero is going to belong to one of 15 different character classes, and each of course are going to have their own statistics and skills that are unique to them, and these things can be upgraded over time, not only as they progress through the dungeon, but if they come back from it, they can go back down again. The unfortunate thing with these guys is that once you hire them on and they go down into this dungeon and they die, they don't come back. They're dead forever. So any progress that you put into them, it's lost. So once you have your supplies and your heroes, you then pick out 4 of the heroes that you want to send down in this dungeon. The heroes that you send into this dungeon are then going to have combat encounters that is turn-based combat. And not only can the combat have a negative effect on their physical health, such as taking attacks and bleeding and blah, blah, blah. It also negatively impacts their mental health, which is where this game really starts to shine. This mental health system is referred to as affliction. So the affliction system indicates the level of stress that a given hero is at. So stress is going to accumulate over time through seeing a fellow member of the party die, take damage, you taking damage, lack of lighting, lack of food resources. So these stress levels, when they start to pile up, are going to then start affecting the hero and their behavior. They're going to do such things such as being too frightened to actually directly attack any enemy. They're going to act out against the player's directions. And then upon reaching a high level of stress in the affliction system, the hero is going to have a heart attack, which will basically push them to the brink of death. So stress can then be lowered by being at different camping locations, giving restorative items, or just by going back to Hamlet and giving them some time to rest. And with that, you have tier 2 of the iceberg. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if there's any others that you would like me to add on to the list as we go down. I'm not trying to make it too cumbersome or anything. I know I have a list that I could add on to what I already have going on, but I don't want to make it too big. I should have a link in the description. I believe that I had it in the last video, but I'm not 100% sure, but there's definitely going to be a link in the description below that will take you to the Iceberg Charts website where I'm making this thing at. And there you can comment suggestions. You can comment suggestions in the comment section of this video. If you don't want to take that extra step, it's perfectly fine. Just let me know your thoughts. I'm trying to improve, so hopefully visually this looks a lot better. Also, hopefully doing a lot more in terms of the visual aids as far as photos videos and anything else like that popping up throughout the video. So just let me know your thoughts, trying to improve it gradually over time. With that, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.